Season 5 is right around the corner, and I've been getting a few questions more frequently than ever before. Namely, what class is the best? What is para rolling, and what is his penis size? I'll settle the latter ones right away. I'm going rogue, and it's mid at best. For the former question, though, let's dive right into my class tier list for Season 5. This is what I'm basing it on, leveling, which is basically all the way from level 1 to 100, endgame, which mainly consists of nuking bosses and crushing the pit. Build variety, which is how many different builds and skills are actually viable. And what viable, I'm talking about roughly A-tier builds and above. And of course, the amount of lingerie in the cosmetic shop. Hey, who am I kidding? Rogue wins that one right away. Either way, let's start with the reason hentai exists, or in other words, sorcerer players. Because why the hell not? So how are the hentai abusers looking for Season 5? Well, shit. I'll just go ahead and say it, pretty goddamn good. And first out is leveling. Sorcerer has always been a great leveler, despite being shit in general. In Season 4, that was more true than ever before. Personally, my favorite leveling build is the Ice Shards build, and then transitioning into Blizzard. But there's a buttload of viable leveling builds, but I'd say that when you get to a point where you can slap Blizzard onto your bars, then you're going to be blasting real hard. This is mainly due to the Nightmare Dungeon events being buffed to the moon, allowing you to just drop a few Blizzards along with a wet fart on their sorry asses, and you're instantly raking in a experience orgasm. But even if you're not rolling Blizzard, most core skills has been buffed for the Sorcerer, meaning the best leveler got even better. Due to this, the Sorcerer is getting a score of 5 out of 5 when it comes to leveling. For endgame, things are not quite as good, but it's looking fine as hell. Sorcerer is looking to have a buttload of builds in S tier this season, with Firebolt, Frozen Orb, and Chain Lightning to name a few. While they may not be the absolute best, unless Makuna starts cooking some serious Sorcerer builds, obviously, then we are looking at a somewhat of mid-endgame performance. Due to this, Sorcerer is getting a 3 out of 5 performance when it comes to endgame pushing. And finally, the build variety. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Sorcerer has the absolute best build variety out of all classes this season. Name a skill and there will be a build for it. So whether you want to run around with circling balls around you or freeze the asses off your enemies via Blizzard, you're all good to go. That's an obvious 5 out of 5 for the build variety right there. Alright, so let me just grab my calculator for a sec, because this shit is rough. Yep, that's indeed a rating of 13 out of 15 bold content creators right there. Heading into the next class, we found the Skinny Boy, aka the Lingerie God the Rogue. So what's going on with the leveling there? Well, shit. It's looking fine as hell. Probably more fine than ever. Recently, Rogue has been somewhere in the middle to top of the pack when it comes to leveling, and they seem to remain there with Barrage being the golden standard of Rogue leveling. Now here's when shit becomes interesting though, and that's Flurry. Slapping on Flurry, Shadow Imbuement combined with the Momentum Key passive, and a few additional important aspects I've been cooking, I believe this could just flat out become the best leveling build in the game. Due to this, that's what I'll be running. But even without this, Rogue is getting the 4 out of 5 rating right there. Alright, and what about endgame? Well shit, they won. Wait, what, won? Yeah, buddy, Rapid Fire and Andariel's Visage is going to dominate in Season 5. On top of that, Barrage could come into play with the new uniques. I strongly believe that Rogue is looking to be the strongest endgame pusher in Season 5, with a few other class builds looking similarly strong. That's an easy 5 out of 5 right there. And finally, the build variety. The thing about Rogue is, sadly, that the disparity between great and shit builds are so insanely high that you tend to be forced into playing a handful of builds unless you want to brick your character. But despite this, A handful of builds is still greater than a few, so I'm willing to give the Rogue a 4 out of 5 due to this. But honestly, man, after we have tested all the changes, Rogue could just flat out pump out another handful of insane builds as they're getting a buttload of changes. We'll have to wait and see for ourselves. A solid 13 out of 15 cancelled content creators. Next up is my favorite. Oh, well, it was. Now the class has turned to shit, and it's of course the shit-smelling barbarian. Surprisingly enough, the barbarian leveling experience was rather solid during Season 4. Following the bald hoodie guy's leveling adventures, it was in fact one of his absolute fastest leveling classes. This is mainly due to the titty twisters being insanely strong for leveling and easy to get going. Now the major downside, though, is the absolute earliest of leveling, seeing as without the Dust Devil aspects, you're going to suffer hard. Despite this, though, once you are online, you should only get surpassed by the hentai enjoyers. As a friendly recommendation, go double swing and swap to whirlwind titty twisters, and you will have a great time leveling in Season 5. A solid 4 out of 5 leveling experience along with the Rogue. And the barbarians in the end get... what end? What the fuck is going on? Alright, in the game end, the class has turned to shit. But at least we got to enjoy a few seasons at the top. As it currently stands, Bash followed by Flay, and the titty twisters are looking to reign supreme for the barbarians. But those are just not good enough. Hopefully someone may cook up something good, because it's looking grim indeed. For starters, the Bash Cleave Temper was gutted. Gushing Wounds was killed. Every single unique we rocked on the PTR was basically removed from the game, and much more. They're getting a 3 out of 5 right there when it comes to the end of the game. And build variety? Well, shit, seeing as every key passive is getting hard nerfed in Season 5, even the mediocre Barb builds got turned to shit. Nicely done. A 1 out of 5. And that's a solid 8 out of 15 German barbarians right there. But I'm tilted as fuck, so may as well just give it 1 out of 15 because why the hell not? -1 out of 15,000, that is. Next up, we have the Fatty McFatty, aka the Woodchopper, aka the new most based king of D4. And I'll explain why you're a base king if you're playing a Druid. For starters, you're picking the ugliest character in the game, and you're fine with it. And on top of that, you're willingly dragging your ballsack through sharp glass all the way from level 1 to level 100. Because that's Druid leveling for you. But there is despite this one slight saving grace, and that is Landslide. Being insanely hard buffed in Season 5, it single-handedly is going to dominate the Woodchopper meta. And that goes for the leveling as well. Honestly, man, leveling with Landslide may actually feel pretty good, but choose any other build and get ready to suffer for 70 levels or so. But solely due to the Landslider, the Woodchopper is getting a 3 out of 5. If not for this, probably a 1 out of 5. Alright, and the endgame. Now this is where Druid used to shine. In Season 0, that is, because it's been shit for a long time. But that has finally changed, and Landslide will be complete god tier. So Druids, rejoice. You may never get this opportunity ever again. A solid 5 out of 5 right there, mainly due to Landslide. Finally, we have the build variety. Now here's the thing. I expect the Landslider to be miles ahead of any other Druid build, but despite this, the Fatty has a lot going for it. Namely, a bunch of A-tier builds. To name a few, the Ace of Spades Wind Daddy build, Boulder, Pulverize, Companions, Hurricane. That's pretty goddamn solid. I'm going to go out on a limb here and give it a solid 4 out of 5 when it comes to the build variety. And if I've calculated that correctly, we are getting the total score. 12 out of 15 nights without sleeping. Pretty solid. For the final class, we have the Neckbeard Cringelord class, the Necro. I don't know what the hell the people balancing the Necro is smoking, but I definitely want a piece of it. Perhaps I'll be speaking backwards then. Skaslab. Okay, maybe I should explain myself. We'll start with the leveling though, because not much has changed here. The leveling is solid, mainly due to Blood Surge crushing everything in the early game and minions blowing shit up in the mid-game. The Necro is however held back by being a fucking sloth, forcing them to stay at a mediocre 3 out of 5 rating. For the end game, shit hits the fan though. Basically we have Bone Spirit, which is basically the best build in the game. We then have perhaps 2 builds in the A tier, which is pretty solid for the end game. And then, the rest of the builds took a trip to Uganda, settled down, and was never to be seen again. Because they're shit. Okay, I may be exaggerating slightly, but there's at least a bit of truth to it. Bone Spirit does, however, grant the Cringe Lord a 5 out of 5 rating. But due to the reasons mentioned, the build variety is getting a 2 out of 5. Absolute dog. Combining all of the scores, we get a total 10 out of 15 Necromancer balancing Blizzard employees. And that, my friends, are all the classes. Let's rank them. We have 3 tiers, God tier. Which classes belong here? Damn right, the Rogue and the Sorcerer. Mainly due to the insane endgame potential of the Rogue and the massive build variety of the Sorcerer. Mid-tier. Here we find the Fatty McFatty along with the Cringe Lord. And finally, coming in at a solid 1 out of 15 rating in the shit tier, the Barb. It's a great time to be a Barb main, folks. Okay, that's all for me. Stay shredded, kings.